The lightning split the sky like a jagged wound, and Maren Vane threw herself against the massive oak door with the desperation of someone who had stopped caring about dignity 3 miles ago. Her fist connected with the wood. Once. Twice. A third time, harder, her knuckles screaming in protest. She was soaked through to the bone. Her traveling dress, once a respectable dove gray, now clung to her body like a second skin, heavy with rain and mud from when she had stumbled into that ditch a half-mile back. Her hair had escaped its pins entirely, plastered against her face and neck in dark, dripping ribbons. One of her boots had lost its heel somewhere on the road, leaving her standing at an awkward tilt. She looked, she imagined, like something the storm had dragged in and then thought better of. The door swung open so suddenly that Maren nearly fell through it. A butler stood in the doorway, his face arranged in an expression of such profound horror that she might have laughed under different circumstances. Behind him, warmth and light spilled out like a promise, golden and flickering with what had to be 100 candles. "Please." Maren's voice came out as a croak. "The storm. I need shelter, just until it passes." The butler's mouth opened, but no words emerged. He seemed frozen, caught between duty and disgust, uncertain which impulse should win. Maren did not wait for him to decide. She pushed past him into the entrance hall, leaving a trail of water on what she dimly registered as very expensive marble. The warmth hit her like a physical force, and she gasped, her frozen limbs suddenly aware of just how cold they had become. "I apologize for the intrusion." She turned, trying to gather some semblance of composure. "I was traveling to Ashford Park for a position, the governess post, but the storm came faster than expected, and my driver abandoned me when the horses bolted, and I saw lights through the trees. I thought this was." She trailed off, looking around properly for the first time. This was not Ashford Park. Ashford Park, according to the letter in her pocket, was a modest country house, comfortable, respectable, the sort of place that hired governesses and paid them fairly. This was something else entirely. The entrance hall soared upward into shadow, its ceiling lost somewhere in the darkness above. A grand staircase swept upward in a dramatic curve, its banister gleaming with polish. Portraits lined the walls, generations of stern-faced aristocrats staring down at her with collective disapproval. Everything spoke of old money and older blood, of power so entrenched it had forgotten it needed to prove itself. Maren's stomach dropped. "Where am I? Ravenmore Hall?" The voice came from above, deep and cold, and utterly devoid of welcome. She looked up. A man stood at the top of the staircase, half shadowed by the flickering candlelight. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in dark evening clothes that fit him like armor. His hair was black, swept back from a face that might have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and harder edges, a jaw that could cut glass, cheekbones that threw shadows. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath, pale gray, almost silver in the uncertain light, and cold. So cold, she felt the chill of them from 20 feet away. He descended the stairs with unhurried grace, each step measured and deliberate, like a predator who saw no need to rush. "Ravenmore Hall," Maren repeated stupidly. "This is not Ashford Park. Ashford Park is 4 miles east." His gaze swept over her, cataloging her ruined dress, her bare head, her mud-splattered face, with an assessment so thorough she felt stripped. "You appear to have made a significant navigational error. The storm. My driver. Yes, you mentioned. You." He reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped, maintaining a careful distance, as though her condition might be contagious. "The question is what to do with you now. I can leave." The words came out before she could think better of them. "As soon as the storm passes, I will." "I apologize for the intrusion. I did not mean to." "You did not mean to pound on my door like a woman fleeing the hounds of hell?" You did not mean to drip half the countryside onto my floor? You did not mean to stand in my entrance hall looking like a drowned specter while my staff gapes at you? Heat flooded Marin's face. Behind her, she could hear the butler shuffling, and she became aware of other presences, maids hovering in doorways, a footman frozen mid-step, all of them watching this disaster unfold. I did not know this was your hall, she said quietly. I saw lights. I was cold. I acted on instinct rather than reason. Clearly, if you would simply allow me to wait out the storm in your kitchens, I will trouble you no further. I am not asking for charity, only shelter. The man studied her for a long moment, his silver eyes unreadable. Then something shifted in his expression. Not warmth, exactly. More like calculation. What is your name? Marin Vane. And you say you were traveling to a governess position, Miss Vane? Yes. You have references. Letters of introduction? In my bag, which is currently somewhere between here and the village, lost when the carriage wheel broke. How convenient. Marin's spine stiffened. There is nothing convenient about any of this, I assure you. I have walked 4 miles in a storm. I have lost my belongings, my position, and apparently my sense of direction. I am standing in a stranger's home looking like something fished from a river, being interrogated as though I planned this catastrophe for my own amusement. I assure you, sir, I would rather be anywhere else. The ghost of something, not quite a smile but close, flickered across his face. Sir, he repeated, do you know who I am, Miss Vane? I know you are rude and inhospitable. Beyond that, I confess ignorance. The butler made a strangled sound. The man's eyebrow rose. Rude and inhospitable. How refreshing. Most people at least wait until they know my title before they insult me. I was not aware a title was required for basic human decency. Now he did smile, though it contained no warmth whatsoever. A razor's edge of amusement, sharp enough to cut. I am Caelan Ashworth, he said, Duke of Ravenmore. And you, Miss Vane, have just created a rather interesting problem. Duke. The word landed like a stone in still water. Marin felt the ripples spreading outward, felt the weight of every watching eye in the hall, felt the full horror of her situation crystallize into perfect, terrible clarity. She had stormed into a duke's home. She had dripped on a duke's marble. She had called a duke rude and inhospitable to his face. Her voice failed. You arrived unannounced, unchaperoned, and in a state of considerable disarray. The Duke clasped his hands behind his back, his tone conversational, almost pleasant. You have been seen by no fewer than 8 members of my household staff. By morning, every servant in the county will know that a young woman of unknown origin spent the night at Ravenmore Hall. By afternoon, the speculation will reach the village. By evening, the story will be halfway to London, growing more scandalous with each retelling. I did not mean. Intent is irrelevant, Miss Vane. Perception is all that matters. And the perception, he stepped closer, his silver eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her chest tighten, is that you have been compromised under my roof. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. That is absurd. Nothing has happened. Nothing will happen. I simply needed shelter from a storm. Try explaining that to society. His voice was soft now, almost gentle. Try explaining that to the gossips, who will wonder why a duke allowed an unmarried woman to remain under his roof. Try explaining that to your future employers, who will question your judgment and your virtue. Marin's hands trembled. She clenched them into fists to hide it. What would you have me do? Walk back into the storm and drown? Of course not. The Duke tilted his head, studying her like a puzzle he was slowly solving. I would have you stay, but not as a refugee from the weather. What do you mean? I mean, Miss Vane, that you're unfortunate arrival has presented me with an unexpected opportunity." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a murmur that only she could hear. "You need shelter, and the protection of a good name. I need something rather different, and I believe we can help each other." Lightning flashed beyond the windows, thunder rolling close behind, shaking the very walls of Ravenmoor Hall. In that moment of white light, Marin saw something in the Duke's silver eyes that contradicted his cold facade. Desperation. "What could you possibly need from me?" she whispered. The Duke smiled that razor smile again. "Stay," he said, "and I will explain everything. But choose quickly, Miss Vane. The storm is not the only thing closing in." The study was warm, almost suffocating so after the chill of the entrance hall. A fire blazed in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls, lined with books and maps, and the accumulated weight of generations. Marin stood near the door, acutely aware of the puddle forming beneath her ruined boots, while the Duke settled into a leather chair with the ease of a man who owned everything he surveyed. Which, she supposed, he did. A maid had been summoned, a quiet girl with kind eyes, who had wrapped Marin in a thick woolen blanket and pressed a cup of hot tea into her shaking hands. The tea was excellent. The situation was not. "You mentioned an opportunity," Marin said when the silence stretched too long. "I confess I cannot imagine what arrangement a duke might propose to a drowned governess." The Duke, Kalen, steepled his fingers, watching her over their peaks. "How much do you know about aristocratic society, Miss Vane? Enough to know I do not belong in it." "A fair assessment." His lips quirked. "Then allow me to educate you. I am 32 years old, unmarried, in possession of 3 estates, a seat in Parliament, and a fortune that certain people find very interesting indeed." "Certain people?" "My grandmother, primarily, the Dowager Duchess of Ravenmoor. She has decided that my bachelor state is an affliction requiring immediate remedy. For the past 9 months, since my father's death, she has paraded an endless procession of suitable young ladies before me, each more tedious than the last." Marin said nothing. She was beginning to see where this was going, and she did not like it. Her current favorite is Lady Lavinia Cross. The Duke's voice flattened. "Daughter of the Earl of Whitmore. Beautiful, accomplished, well-connected. Everything a duchess should be. She sounds ideal. She is insufferable." He stood abruptly, moving to the window, where rain still lashed against the glass. "She simpers. She agrees with everything I say. She has never had an original thought in her life, and has no intention of starting now. My grandmother believes this makes her perfect. I believe it would make me miserable for the next 50 years. I sympathize with your predicament, but I still do not see. My grandmother will arrive tomorrow." The Duke turned to face her. "She summers here every year, and she is bringing Lady Lavinia with her. There is to be a house party, various lords and ladies, a ball at the end of the fortnight. She has made it abundantly clear that she expects an engagement announcement. And you do not wish to make one. I do not wish to marry Lady Lavinia. I do not wish to marry anyone. Not yet, perhaps not ever. But my grandmother is relentless, and I have run out of excuses." Marin set down her tea, her mind racing. "You want me to provide you with an excuse?" The Duke crossed the room, stopping before her chair, looking down at her with those unsettling silver eyes. "I want you to provide me with a complication. You have already arrived unchaperoned, in scandalous circumstances. The gossip is already spreading. What if we gave them something more interesting to talk about? I do not understand. What if you were not a stranded governess at all? What if you were a guest, a family connection, perhaps a distant cousin of my late mother, come to stay for the season? What if the circumstances of your arrival were not scandal, but simply misfortune, easily explained and quickly forgotten. And what would that accomplish? He smiled, but there was something almost desperate beneath the calculation. If I am seen to be paying attention to you, my grandmother cannot force Lady Lavinia upon me. If society believes I am already pursuing someone, the pressure disappears. I gain time. Freedom. The ability to choose my own path, rather than having it chosen for me. And what do I gain? Shelter. Protection. A position far more comfortable than governess work. When the season ends, when my grandmother has accepted that I will not marry her chosen candidate, we part ways amicably. You receive references, letters of introduction, enough connections to secure any position you desire. No scandal touches your name. Indeed, your name is elevated. Marin's heart pounded. It was mad. Utterly, completely mad. You are asking me to lie to everyone you know. I am asking you to play a role. There is a difference. Is there? The Duke held her gaze. You told me you were traveling to a governess position. That means you need employment. You need income. You need security. I am offering you all three in exchange for a few weeks of pretense. And if we are discovered, we will not be. You cannot guarantee that. No. His voice softened, and for a moment she glimpsed something beneath the cold exterior, something human and uncertain. I cannot, but I can promise you this, Miss Vane. I will protect you. Whatever happens, whatever complications arise, I will ensure you emerge unscathed. You have my word as a gentleman. Marin laughed, the sound sharp and surprised. A gentleman. You have known me for 20 minutes and are already proposing deception. Would you prefer I had left you in the storm? She had no answer for that. The fire crackled. Rain hammered against the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed midnight. I have conditions, Marin heard herself say. The Duke's eyebrow rose. You are bargaining with me. You need me as much as I need shelter. That makes this a negotiation, not a charity. Something flickered in his eyes. Interest, perhaps, or surprise. Name your terms. Marin stood, letting the blanket fall from her shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. First, my family must be informed. I have a brother in London, a mother in Hampshire. I will not have them thinking I have vanished or come to harm. Done. Second, when this arrangement ends, I want genuine references, not vague pleasantries. Real letters of introduction to real families who might employ me. I will not return to poverty simply because our charade has concluded. The Duke nodded slowly. That can be arranged. Third, Marin stepped closer, her voice hardening. I will not be made a fool. If you decide to pursue Lady Lavinia or any other woman while I am playing this role, you will tell me immediately. I will not be paraded as your distraction while you conduct a real courtship behind my back. The silence stretched between them, sharp as glass. You are either very brave or very foolish, the Duke said finally. I have not decided which. I have been called both, usually by people who underestimated me. He extended his hand. Then we have an agreement, Miss Vane. Welcome to Ravenmoor Hall. She took his hand. His grip was warm and firm, his palm calloused in ways she hadn't expected from a Duke. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, something electric and unsettling. She released him quickly. Where will I sleep? The blue guest suite. It belonged to my mother. You will find it comfortable. And tomorrow, when your grandmother arrives, tomorrow we begin the performance. He moved toward the door, then paused, glancing back at her over his shoulder. Rest well, Miss Vane. You will need your strength. For what? For surviving my grandmother. He left, and Marin sank back into her chair, staring at the fire. What had she just agreed to? The blue guest suite was not simply comfortable. It was magnificent. Maren stood in the center of the bedroom, turning slowly, trying to absorb the reality of her surroundings. The bed was enormous, a four-poster draped in silk the color of a summer sky. The windows stretched nearly floor to ceiling, hung with velvet curtains that pooled on the polished wood floor. A writing desk sat near one window, delicate and feminine. A vanity occupied another corner, its mirror reflecting a woman Maren barely recognized. She looked wild, haunted. Her hair had dried into a tangled mess. Her face was pale and drawn, and her eyes held a desperate light that made her uncomfortable. This room, this house, this entire situation, it was not meant for women like her. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Miss Vane? A maid entered, perhaps 16 or 17, with copper curls escaping from beneath her cap and a nervous smile. I am Nell. His Grace assigned me as your lady's maid. I have brought you some things. A nightgown. Some toiletries. I did not know your size, but Cook has arranged for breakfast to be brought up tomorrow, and then we can see about proper clothes. Maren blinked. A lady's maid? For me? His Grace's orders, miss. Nell began laying out items on the bed. I hope you do not mind me saying, but the staff is all aflutter. We have not had a proper guest in ages. Not since the old Duke passed, God rest him. His Grace keeps to himself mostly. Works in his study. Rides the grounds. Hardly speaks to anyone. He seemed to speak well enough to me. The words came out drier than Maren intended. Nell giggled. Yes, miss. That is what has everyone so excited. Mrs. Pemberton, that is the housekeeper. She said she hasn't seen His Grace talk that long to anyone in months, not since the funeral. Maren absorbed this information quietly. The funeral. His father. She remembered the coldness in his eyes, the careful distance he maintained. Perhaps it was not simply arrogance. Perhaps it was something else. The storm has passed, Nell continued, moving to draw the curtains closed. The roads will still be a mess, but by tomorrow afternoon they should be passable. If you wanted to leave, I mean. Do you think I should leave? Nell paused, her hands on the velvet. That is not for me to say, miss. But if you ask my opinion, which you didn't, but I will give it anyway because my mother always said I talk too much, I think you should stay. This house needs something. Someone. It has been too quiet for too long. She finished with the curtains and curtsied awkwardly. Is there anything else you need, miss? No. Thank you, Nell. You have been very kind. The maid beamed and departed, leaving Maren alone with the silence. She changed into the borrowed nightgown, soft cotton that smelled faintly of lavender, and climbed into the enormous bed. The mattress enveloped her like a cloud. The pillows were down-filled. The sheets were cool and crisp and impossibly luxurious. She should have felt comforted. Instead, she felt like an imposter. Tomorrow, the Dowager Duchess would arrive. Tomorrow, the performance would begin. Tomorrow, she would have to pretend to be someone she was not, in a world she did not understand, for a man she had known less than an hour. It was madness. Complete and utter madness. But as Maren stared at the canopy above her, listening to the wind rattle the windows, she found she could not regret her decision. Her old life was a narrow road leading nowhere. Governess positions and modest rooms and the slow grinding down of hope and possibility. This was something else. Something dangerous and uncertain and alive. For the first time in years, Maren Vane did not know what tomorrow would bring. And despite everything, despite the fear and the strangeness and the cold silver eyes of a duke who needed something from her, she found that she was looking forward to finding out. Sleep came slowly, fitfully, filled with dreams of storms and shadows, and a voice murmuring in the darkness. Stay, it said. and everything will change. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, to the smell of fresh bread and hot tea, to a world that had transformed overnight from gray misery to golden possibility, and to the sound of carriage wheels on gravel, announcing that the Dowager Duchess of Ravenmore had arrived. The performance was about to begin. The Dowager Duchess of Ravenmore was not what Marin expected. She had imagined someone ancient and withered, draped in black crepe and bitterness. Instead, the woman who swept into the morning room was tall and striking, her silver hair arranged in an elaborate style that must have taken hours. Her posture was military straight, her eyes the same pale gray as her grandson's, but sharper, more assessing. She wore dove-gray silk that rustled with every movement, and diamonds glittered at her throat and ears. She looked like a queen surveying a conquered territory. So, the single word carried more weight than a sermon. This is the young woman who arrived in a storm. Marin rose from her chair and curtsied, grateful for the borrowed morning dress Nell had found. It was slightly too large, clearly from some previous guest's abandoned wardrobe, but it was clean and respectable. Your Grace, I apologize for the unconventional circumstances of my arrival. Unconventional. The Dowager circled her slowly, examining her from every angle. That is a generous word for it. I heard you looked like a drowned cat when you appeared on my grandson's doorstep. I believe the phrase was drowned specter, Your Grace. The Dowager's eyebrow rose. You correct me. I clarify. There is a difference. Silence fell, thick and dangerous. Marin could feel sweat prickling at the back of her neck, but she refused to look away. Then, impossibly, the Dowager laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, more surprise than amusement, but it transformed her face entirely. Kaelin warned me you had spine. She settled into a chair, gesturing for Marin to sit as well. He did not mention you were foolish enough to display it. I find honesty more efficient than flattery, Your Grace. Do you? How refreshing, and how utterly impractical for the world you are about to enter. A servant appeared with tea, and the Dowager poured with practiced grace, her movements economical and precise. She handed Marin a cup, watching her over the rim of her own. My grandson tells me you are a distant connection of his late mother, a cousin, several times removed, recently fallen on hard times. That is the story we have agreed upon. The Dowager set down her cup with a decisive click. I have already made inquiries, Miss Vane. There is no cousin matching your description in any branch of the Ashworth family tree. Your accent suggests Hampshire, your hands suggest work, and your bearing suggests education above your current station. You are not what you claim to be. No, Your Grace, I am not. Then who are you? Exactly what I appear to be. A woman who needed shelter from a storm and found herself in an impossible situation. Your grandson offered a solution that benefits us both. Benefits you both. The Dowager's eyes narrowed. You mean he is using you to avoid Lady Lavinia? I mean, we have an arrangement. And what do you gain from this arrangement? Security. References. The possibility of a future better than the one I was facing. The Dowager studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You are poor, she said finally. Gently bred, but poor. No fortune, no connections, no prospects beyond whatever governess position my grandson's interference has now cost you. Yes, and you agreed to this scheme, knowing it could destroy your reputation entirely if discovered. My reputation was already fragile, Your Grace. One more crack hardly matters. The Dowager leaned forward, her voice dropping. Let me tell you what you have walked into, Miss Vane. My grandson is not simply avoiding an unwanted marriage. He is avoiding life itself. Since his father died 9 months ago, he has been a ghost in his own house. He performs his duties. He manages his estates. He attends Parliament and votes and speaks when required. But he is not here. Not truly. Marin thought of the coldness in Kaelin's eyes, the careful distance he maintained. His father's death was sudden? A riding accident. The Dowager's voice did not waver, but something tightened around her eyes. Kaelin was in London when it happened. By the time word reached him, by the time he rode through the night to get here, his father was already gone. He never said goodbye. I am sorry. Are you? Or is that simply what one says? The echo of Kaelin's own words sent a chill down Marin's spine. I lost my father's business, she said quietly, his livelihood, his pride. I watched him diminish day by day, becoming less than he was. He is still alive, but some essential part of him died when everything he built collapsed. So, yes, Your Grace, I understand loss. I am genuinely sorry for your grandsons. The Dowager was silent for a long moment. I want him to marry, she said finally. Not because of duty or heirs or family legacy. I want him to marry because I want him to live again. To feel something beyond grief and obligation. Lady Lavinia is suitable, yes, but she is also shallow and self-absorbed. She would bore him within a month, and boredom would become resentment, and resentment would become the kind of cold, empty marriage that destroys people slowly. Then why push the match? Because he will not choose for himself. He has buried himself in work and solitude, and he will remain there forever unless someone forces him out. And you thought Lady Lavinia could do that? I thought anyone was better than no one. The Dowager rose, moving to the window. But now you are here. An unknown variable. A disruption I did not plan. I am not trying to trap your grandson into marriage. No, I do not believe you are, which makes you rather more interesting than I expected. She turned, her gray eyes piercing. I will support this charade, Miss Vane. Publicly, you will be exactly what Kaelin claims. A family connection. A guest, a potential interest. But privately, I want you to understand something. Yes, Your Grace. If you hurt him, if you manipulate his grief for your own gain, if you damage him further in any way, I will ensure you never work in any respectable household in England again. I will destroy every opportunity, every connection, every hope you have. Do we understand each other? Perfectly, Your Grace. The Dowager nodded once, sharp and final. Good. Now, we have a great deal of work to do before the ball. Lady Lavinia arrives this afternoon with the other guests, and you need to be ready. Ready for what? For war, Miss Vane, and war requires armor. The next 4 days passed in a blur of activity that left Marin dizzy and exhausted. A modiste arrived from the village the morning after the Dowager's interrogation, a tiny Frenchwoman named Madame Colbert, who took one look at Marin and burst into rapid speech about bone structure and coloring and the absolute tragedy of her current wardrobe. The emerald silk, she declared, circling Marin with pins bristling from her lips. It will make her eyes sing. And the champagne for the ball. Classic. Elegant. Unforgettable. Marin stood on a small platform in her borrowed chemise, arms aching from being held out, while Madame Colbert draped fabric and muttered measurements. Is this truly necessary? She asked. It is only a country ball. Only a country ball, the Dowager's voice cut from the doorway. Every eligible family within 50 miles will attend. Lady Lavinia will be wearing Paris couture. You will not face her in borrowed rags. I do not need to compete with Lady Lavinia. You most certainly do. The Dowager settled into a chair, watching the fitting with critical eyes. This is not about vanity, Miss Vane. This is about perception. If you appear shabby or uncertain, people will wonder why my grandson would bother with you. They will look for the scandal. They will find it. And if I appear confident and well-dressed, they will still gossip. But the gossip will be different. admiring rather than condemning, intrigued rather than suspicious. The logic was sound, even if it made Marin uncomfortable. Between fittings, there were lessons. A dancing master arrived to polish her steps, a severe man named Mr. Hastings, who rapped her ankles with his cane when she faltered. A deportment instructor drilled her on curtsies and titles, and the precise way to hold a fan. The dowager herself provided endless information about the guests, their families, their scandals, their alliances. Lord Pemberton is a fool, but a harmless one. Lady Whitmore is Lady Lavinia's mother, and will be watching you like a hawk. The Sinclair brothers are charming, but not to be trusted. Mrs. Ashby is the worst gossip in the county. Flatter her shamelessly, and she will be your greatest ally. Marin absorbed it all, her head spinning with names and faces and intricate social webs. Through it all, Kaelin remained absent. She caught glimpses of him occasionally, a figure on horseback disappearing into the morning mist, a shadow passing the library door, his voice low and distant, speaking to servants or his steward about estate matters. He took his meals in his study, the dowager explained when Marin finally asked. He has done so since his father died. He says he is too busy for formal dining. But he is avoiding me. He is avoiding everyone. The dowager's voice softened slightly. Do not take it personally, Miss Vane. He is not ready to be present. Not yet. On the third day, Marin found herself alone in the library. It was a beautiful room, filled floor to ceiling with books, their leather spines gleaming in the afternoon light. She had discovered it by accident, wandering the halls during a rare free moment, and had been drawn inside by the smell of paper and ink and old knowledge. She was reaching for a volume of poetry when a voice spoke behind her. That was my father's favorite. Marin spun. Kaelin stood in the doorway, looking almost uncertain, as though he had not expected to find anyone here. I apologize. She pulled her hand back. I did not mean to intrude. You are not intruding. It is a library. It is meant to be used. He entered slowly, his movements careful, as though the room itself might wound him. I simply haven't. I have not been here much. Since your father died. He flinched, almost imperceptibly. Yes, Marin watched him, this cold and guarded man, and saw beneath the armor for the first time. Saw the grief he carried like a physical weight. Saw the way his eyes moved over the shelves, lingering on certain volumes, avoiding others. My father used to read to me, she said softly. When I was small, he would sit by the fire and recite poetry from memory. I thought he knew everything. I thought he was invincible. Kaelin was very still. What happened? He trusted the wrong partner. Lost everything he had built. Now he barely speaks. He sits in a chair by the window and watches the world pass by, and I do not think he sees any of it. The silence between them felt different now, less confrontational, more honest. I am sorry, Kaelin said finally, for your father, for what you have lost, and I am sorry for yours. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. The strange intimacy of shared grief. Then Kaelin cleared his throat, stepping back, rebuilding his walls. The ball is tomorrow. My grandmother tells me you are ready. Your grandmother tells you what she wishes you to believe. He almost smiled. True. She has that tendency. He moved toward the door, then paused. You will do well tomorrow, Miss Vane. I have watched you these past days. You are stronger than you know. He left before she could respond, and Marin stood alone in the library, her heart beating too fast, wondering what exactly was happening to her. Tomorrow, the ball. Tomorrow, everything would change. She only hoped she was ready for it. The champagne gown was everything Madame Colbert had promised. Marin stood before the mirror in her room, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. The silk caught the candlelight, and shimmered like liquid gold. Her dark hair had been arranged in an elaborate style, threaded through with tiny pearls that Nell had produced from some mysterious source. Her eyes seemed larger, darker, framed by the warm tones of the dress. She looked like someone who belonged. The thought terrified her. "You are beautiful, miss." Nell clasped her hands together, beaming. "His Grace will not be able to look away. That is not the point. Is it not?" Before Maren could answer, a knock sounded at the door. The dowager entered, resplendent in silver silk, her diamonds blazing. "Acceptable," she pronounced after a thorough examination. "More than acceptable. You will do nicely." High praise indeed. The dowager's lips quirked. "Come. The guests are arriving." The ballroom at Ravenmore Hall was a revelation of crystal and candlelight. Chandeliers blazed overhead, their flames reflected in 1,000 mirrors. The floor gleamed like honey. Music drifted from a gallery where an orchestra played, and everywhere, people glittered and sparkled and watched. Maren felt their eyes on her the moment she entered. She descended the stairs on the dowager's arm, chin lifted, back straight, every lesson drilled into her muscles. The whispers started immediately, a susurrus of curiosity and speculation that followed her across the room. That is her. The one who arrived in the storm. A cousin, they say. Some distant connection. Convenient, is it not? Appearing just as the Duke needs a distraction. Maren ignored them. She had expected whispers. She had prepared for worse. What she had not prepared for was Lady Lavinia Cross. The woman approached like a ship in full sail, her rose-pink gown cut to emphasize every curve, her golden hair arranged in elaborate ringlets. She was beautiful in the way of porcelain dolls, perfect and cold. "Miss Vane." Her voice was honey over glass. "How delightful to finally meet you. We have heard so much about your dramatic arrival." "Lady Lavinia." Maren curtsied precisely. "I hope the stories have not been too embellished." "Oh, they have been quite colorful. Arrived half-drowned at midnight. Alone. Unchaperoned. How very adventurous of you." The emphasis on alone dripped with implication. "The storm left me few options," Maren replied evenly. "I am grateful for His Grace's hospitality." "Yes, His Grace is known for his hospitality." Lavinia's smile sharpened. "To certain types of women." Before Maren could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "Lady Lavinia, how lovely you look this evening." Kalen appeared at Maren's side, his presence like a sudden warmth. He was devastating in his formal evening clothes, dark and severe, his silver eyes unreadable. "Your Grace." Lavinia's demeanor transformed instantly, softening, sweetening. "I was just becoming acquainted with your cousin." "I see." Kalen's hand came to rest at the small of Maren's back, the touch proprietary and deliberate. "I hope you have made her feel welcome." "Of course. We were simply discussing her journey." "How kind of you." "If you will excuse us, I promised Miss Vane the first dance." He guided Maren toward the dance floor before Lavinia could object, leaving her standing with a frozen smile and fury in her eyes. "That was not subtle," Maren murmured, as they took their positions. "It was not meant to be." Kalen's hand found her waist, his grip firm and steady. "She needed to understand that you are under my protection, and that makes me a target. You were already a target. Now, you are an armed one." The music swelled, and they began to move. Maren had practiced countless hours with Mr. Hastings, had memorized every step and turn and flourish. But dancing with a cane-wielding instructor was nothing like this. Kalen moved with fluid grace, leading her through the waltz, as though they had danced together 100 times. "Stop counting," he said quietly. "I am not. You are. I can see your lips moving. Feel the music instead. Easy for you to say. You grew up in ballrooms. I grew up hating ballrooms." His voice was dry. "All those people watching. Judging. Waiting for a misstep. Then why do this? Because some things are worth the discomfort. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, the ballroom seemed to fade. The music, the watchers, the glittering chaos, all of it dimmed to background noise. "You look beautiful tonight," he said quietly. "I should have said so earlier. You said I would do nicely. I was being restrained." The waltz ended. They stood in the center of the floor, slightly breathless, while the crowd applauded politely. "Thank you for the dance, Your Grace. The pleasure was mine, Miss Vane." He released her with careful formality, but his eyes lingered. The rest of the evening passed in a whirl of introductions and dances and careful conversations. Lords requested her hand on the dance floor. Ladies made pointed inquiries about her family connections. The dowager watched from her throne-like chair, nodding approval or frowning warning as needed. And through it all, Marin felt Kaelin's attention. He did not hover. He was too skilled for that. But she knew, somehow, exactly where he was in the room at any given moment. Knew when his gaze found her across the crowd. It was during a break between dances that Lady Lavinia found her again. "You dance well for a governess?" Marin set down her glass of champagne. "I beg your pardon." "Oh, come now." Lavinia's smile was vicious. "Did you think no one would check? A woman arrives at a duke's door in the middle of the night, claiming to be a cousin no one has heard of. People talk, Miss Vane. Servants gossip. I know exactly what you were traveling to when your carriage broke down." Marin's blood ran cold. "I do not know what you think you know. I know you are a fraud. I know this entire performance is a scheme to keep Kaelin from marrying me, and I know it will not work." Lavinia stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for Marin. "Enjoy your moment, Miss Vane. Play dress-up in borrowed gowns. Pretend you belong. But when this charade collapses, and it will collapse, you will return to whatever miserable existence you crawled from, and I will still be here." She swept away before Marin could respond, leaving her standing alone with a champagne glass and a racing heart. The walls of the ballroom seemed to press inward. The music grew too loud, the candlelight too bright. Marin slipped through a side door onto a terrace overlooking the gardens. The night air was cool against her flushed skin, the stars scattered overhead like spilled diamonds. She gripped the stone balustrade and tried to steady her breathing. She knows everything. This is going to fall apart. Lavinia is bluffing. Marin spun. Kaelin stood in the doorway, his silhouette dark against the golden light spilling from the ballroom. She knows I am not your cousin. She suspects. There is a difference. He moved to stand beside her, looking out over the shadowed gardens. "Lavinia wants you to panic, to make a mistake. Do not give her the satisfaction. What if she tells someone? Then we adapt." His voice was calm, steady. "The story shifts. You become a family friend rather than a cousin. Someone I met through mutual connections. There are 100 variations, and all of them are more interesting than the truth. The truth being that you hired a drowned stranger to pretend to be your interest. The truth being that a remarkable woman stumbled into my life by accident, and I am only now beginning to understand how fortunate that accident was." Marin stared at him. "Kaelin. I should not say this." His jaw tightened. "I know the rules of our arrangement. I know this is supposed to be a performance, a transaction, nothing more. But, he turned to face her, and in the moonlight his silver eyes seemed almost warm. "But I find myself forgetting that it is not real. I find myself looking for you in rooms, listening for your voice, thinking about you when I should be thinking about ledgers and tenants and parliamentary bills. You have disrupted everything, Miss Vane. Everything." Her pulse thundered. "I do not know what to say." "Say nothing." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Or tell me to stop. Tell me this is madness, and I will rebuild my walls, and we will continue as though nothing has changed. Is that what you want? No, the word was barely a breath. What I want is something I have not allowed myself to want in a very long time. The air between them seemed to crackle. Maren should step back. She knew she should. This was dangerous, reckless, a complication that could destroy everything. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was. Kaelin. Before he could respond, before anything could happen, voices drifted from the doorway. There you are, Your Grace. The Dowager appeared, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes sharp. Lady Pemberton is asking after you, something about a charitable subscription. Kaelin stepped back, the moment shattered. Of course, Grandmother. He bowed to Maren, his face once again a mask. Miss Vane, thank you for the evening air. He disappeared into the ballroom, and Maren was left standing in the moonlight with the Dowager's knowing gaze upon her. Be careful, the older woman said quietly. My grandson has forgotten how to want things, without also expecting to lose them. Do not make him remember why. She followed Kaelin inside, leaving Maren alone with the stars and the terrible, wonderful realization that this was no longer just a performance. It had become something real. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The days following the ball were different. Maren could not pinpoint exactly what had changed, but something had shifted in the air between them. Kaelin no longer took his meals alone in his study. He appeared at breakfast, at luncheon, at dinner, sitting across from her, with the Dowager presiding at the head of the table. He spoke more, asked questions about her life before Ravenmoor, listened with genuine attention when she answered. And he watched her, not with the cold assessment of their first meeting, but with something warmer, something that made her pulse quicken every time their eyes met. Lady Lavinia noticed. The house party continued for another week after the ball, and Lavinia made herself a constant presence. She appeared at every gathering, positioned herself beside Kaelin at every opportunity, laughed too loudly at his sparse remarks, and touched his arm with practiced intimacy. But Kaelin's attention kept drifting to Maren. It was infuriating, Lavinia made clear. She cornered Maren in hallways, delivered cutting remarks at dinner, spread whispered poison among the other guests. But Maren had grown armor of her own, and the barbs no longer pierced as deeply. On the 5th day after the ball, Kaelin found her in the library. She had claimed it as her sanctuary, spending quiet hours among the books, while the other guests played cards or walked the gardens. She was curled in a leather chair near the window, reading a volume of Keats, when his shadow fell across the page. You are always here. Maren looked up. He stood in the doorway, his dark hair slightly disheveled, his cravat loosened. He looked almost relaxed. The library does not judge me, she said. Unlike certain other rooms in this house. The drawing room. Lady Lavinia's domain. I prefer to avoid it when possible. Kaelin entered, settling into the chair across from hers. He carried something in his hands, a small package wrapped in brown paper. I have something for you. For me? Consider it an apology. For dragging you into this situation. For the whispers and the scrutiny. For Lavinia. Maren set down her book and took the package. The paper fell away to reveal a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with delicate vines and flowers. Inside, the pages were thick and creamy, perfect for writing. It is beautiful. You mentioned that you used to keep a journal. Before? Kaelin's voice was careful. Before your family's circumstances changed. I thought perhaps you might like to start again. Maren's throat tightened. She had mentioned it once, in passing, during one of their dinners. A casual comment about the girl she used to be, the one who wrote down her thoughts and dreams before reality crushed them into practicality. He had remembered. I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything. He leaned forward, his eyes intent. I simply wanted you to have something of your own. Something that belongs to you, not to this arrangement. She traced the embossed cover with her fingertips. Why are you being kind to me? Because you deserve kindness. And because... He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. Because I find that I want to be kind to you. I want to see you smile. I want to know what you are thinking. I want... He stopped, jaw tightening. What do you want? Kaelin rose abruptly, moving to the window. The afternoon light caught the sharp planes of his face, the tension in his shoulders. I want things I have no right to want. Why not? Because this arrangement ends. Because you will leave. Because I am a duke with responsibilities and expectations. And you are. He turned to face her. You are the most extraordinary woman I have ever met. And I am terrified of what that means. Maren stood slowly, the journal still clutched in her hands. I am terrified too. Then we are both fools. Perhaps. She moved closer, drawn by something stronger than reason. But I would rather be a fool who feels something than a coward who feels nothing. They stood inches apart. His hand came up, hesitating, then gently cupping her cheek. His palm was warm, calloused from riding, trembling slightly. Maren. Her name had never sounded like that before, like a prayer and a question and a confession all at once. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. And then he kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, as though he was asking permission even as he took what he wanted. But when she responded, when her hands found his lapels and pulled him closer, something broke loose in him. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air, like someone who had been cold for so long he had forgotten what warmth felt like. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him, and Maren felt herself dissolving into the sensation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. That was not part of the arrangement, he said roughly. No, it was not. I should apologize. Do you want to? No. His laugh was shaky. I want to do it again. She kissed him this time, rising on her toes to reach him, pouring everything she could not say into the press of her lips against his. He made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, and for a long, perfect moment, nothing else existed. But the world had not disappeared, and eventually it reasserted itself. A door slammed somewhere in the house. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. They sprang apart, breathless and guilty, just as Nell appeared in the doorway. Miss Vane, the Dowager is asking for you. Something about the dinner seating. Nell's eyes flickered between them, taking in their flushed faces and disheveled clothing, but she said nothing. I will be right there. Maren smoothed her dress with trembling hands. Your Grace. Thank you for the journal. Kaelin nodded, his composure cracking at the edges. Miss Vane. She fled the library with her heart pounding and the taste of him still on her lips. Everything had changed, and she had no idea what came next. The blow came 3 days later. Maren was descending the stairs for breakfast when she heard voices in the entrance hall. The Dowager's voice, sharp and cold. Lady Whitmore's, triumphant. And a third voice, unfamiliar, but somehow wrong. She paused on the landing, hidden from view, but able to hear every word. It is all here. Lady Whitmore's voice dripped with satisfaction. The investigation was quite thorough. Your so-called cousin is nothing but a fraud. A governess's daughter who was traveling to a position when she stumbled onto your doorstep. Her family is practically destitute. Her brother has debts throughout London. There is no connection to the Ashworth family whatsoever. The silence that followed was devastating. This is quite a serious accusation, Lady Whitmore. The Dowager's voice was ice. It is not an accusation. It is a fact. Lavinia has been suspicious since the girl arrived, and she was right. This woman has been deceiving you for weeks. She has wormed her way into your grandson's affections under false pretenses. Who knows what her ultimate goal is? Marriage, I would imagine. access to the Ravenmore fortune. That is absurd. The Dowager's voice was less certain now. Is it? She arrived conveniently alone. She has no references, no proof of her identity. And according to my sources, she and the Duke have been growing quite close. Tell me, Your Grace, did you know about this deception? Or have you been fooled as thoroughly as your grandson? Marin's legs gave out. She sank onto the landing step, her whole body trembling. It was over. Everything was over. She heard footsteps approaching, heard the Dowager dismiss Lady Whitmore with cold civility, and heard the front door close with finality. Then silence. You can come down now, Miss Vane. Marin descended on shaking legs. The Dowager stood in the entrance hall, her face pale but composed. You knew, Marin said quietly. From the beginning. I suspected. I confirmed my suspicions within days of your arrival, but I chose to support the charade because I thought. The Dowager's voice faltered. I thought it might be good for Kaelin. I thought you might bring him back to life. And now? Now Lady Whitmore has proof. By tomorrow, every guest in this house will know the truth. By next week, all of London will have heard. The scandal will be immense. Marin's eyes burned. I never meant for this to happen. I know. What do I do? The Dowager was silent for a long moment. You leave. The words fell like stones. Before Kaelin wakes, before anyone else learns the truth, I will handle the fallout. I will find a way to minimize the damage. But you cannot be here when it happens. And Kaelin will survive. He has survived worse. The Dowager's voice cracked almost imperceptibly. But if you stay, if you are here when the whispers begin, it will destroy him. He opened his heart for the first time in months, and it will have been for a lie. Better a clean break than a slow bleeding. Marin wanted to argue, wanted to fight, wanted to run to the library and find Kaelin and tell him everything before someone else did. But the Dowager was right. Every accusation Lady Whitmore had made was true. Marin was a fraud. She had deceived everyone in this house. And now, Kaelin would pay the price for her deception. The least she could do was spare him the humiliation of her presence. I will pack, she whispered. There is a carriage waiting. It will take you to the village. From there, you can arrange transport to wherever you wish to go. And my references, the Dowager's smile was sad. You will have them. Whatever else has happened, you have more than earned them. Marin nodded, unable to speak. She climbed the stairs to her room, packed her few belongings with numb efficiency, changed into her traveling dress. The journal Kaelin had given her sat on her writing desk, its pages still blank. She could not take it, could not bear to carry this reminder of what she was losing, but she could not leave it without explanation. She sat at the desk and wrote a single letter. Your Grace, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Lady Whitmore has discovered the truth of my identity, and I cannot stay to watch the damage unfold. I want you to know that nothing between us was a lie. Not the conversations, not the laughter, not the kiss. Those were real, the realest things I have ever known. But I was always borrowed, always temporary. And borrowed things must eventually be returned. Please do not look for me. Let this be a clean ending. You deserve someone worthy of you, someone who belongs in your world. I will never forget you. Marin. She sealed the letter and left it beside the journal. Then she walked out of Ravenmore Hall without looking back. The village inn was cold and cramped, nothing like the luxury Marin had grown accustomed to over the past weeks. She sat on the narrow bed in her rented room, staring at the wall, and tried not to feel. 2 days had passed since she fled Ravenmore. 2 days of silence and solitude, and the slow, grinding realization that she had left her heart behind. She had written to her mother, explaining only that the position hadn't worked out. She had inquired about coach schedules to Hampshire. She had done everything practical and reasonable and correct, and she had never been more miserable in her life. A knock at the door startled her. "Who is it?" "A friend." The voice was familiar. Maren crossed the room and opened the door to find Nell standing in the hallway, her copper curls escaping from beneath her bonnet, her cheeks flushed from traveling. "Nell." "What are you doing here?" The maid pushed past her into the room, closing the door firmly behind her. "Looking for you, obviously. His Grace is beside himself. He has been tearing the county apart trying to find you." Maren's heart clenched. He should not have come. He did not. Nell's expression was fierce. The Dowager forbade him, said you needed time, said he should let you go. "Then why are you here?" "Because I disagree." Nell grabbed her hands. "Miss, I do not know everything that happened between you and His Grace. I do not need to know. But I know what I saw. I saw him come alive these past weeks. I saw him smile for the first time since his father died. I saw him looking at you like you were the sun after a long winter. And I saw him reading your letter. And I saw his face. And Miss, I have never seen anyone look so broken." Maren's eyes filled with tears. "It does not matter. The truth is out. I am a fraud. I deceived everyone. You played a role. There is a difference." Nell's grip tightened. "And maybe you started as a role, but you became something real. Anyone with eyes could see it. The Dowager saw it. Lady Lavinia saw it. That is why she tried so hard to destroy you. And she succeeded. Only if you let her." Nell released her hands and stepped back. "Listen to me, miss. I am just a maid. I do not know much about society or scandals or what is proper. But I know this. Love does not come along every day. And when it does, you do not run from it because some jealous woman makes trouble. You fight for it. You stay. You let the man who loves you fight beside you. He does not love me. He does. He told the Dowager so himself. Said he would marry you tomorrow if you would have him. Said he did not care about the scandal or the whispers or what anyone thought. Said you were worth more than all of it." Maren sank onto the bed, her legs giving out. He said that. He said a great deal more, but most of it was not fit for polite company. Nell sat beside her. "The point is, you have a choice. You can stay here feeling sorry for yourself, or you can go back to Ravenmore and fight for the man you love. But you have to decide now, because the house party ends tomorrow, and Lady Lavinia is circling like a vulture." Maren stared at her hands. All her life she had played it safe, made the practical choice, accepted what fate dealt her, and made the best of it. Where had that gotten her? A broken family, a dead-end future, a heart full of regret. But Kaelin was offering something different, something terrifying and impossible and real. All she had to do was be brave enough to take it. "Is there a carriage?" she asked quietly. Nell grinned, waiting outside. "Then let us go." The ride to Ravenmore took an eternity. Maren sat in the carriage with her hands clenched in her lap, rehearsing what she would say, discarding each version as inadequate. What words could possibly be enough? When the house finally came into view, her chest tightened with hope. She had left in darkness and despair. Now she returned in the golden light of late afternoon, and Ravenmore Hall looked like something from a dream, a fairy tale castle, a place where impossible things might actually come true. The carriage stopped. Maren climbed out on shaking legs. The front door opened before she reached it, and suddenly Kaelin was there. He looked terrible. His hair was wild, his clothes disheveled, dark circles beneath his eyes. But when he saw her, his face transformed. "Maren." "I came back." He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms. She had expected questions, accusations, demands for explanation. Instead, he simply held her, his face buried in her hair, his arms wrapped around her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I thought I had lost you," he said roughly. "I read your letter, and I thought." "I was a coward." Marin pulled back enough to see his face. "I ran because I was afraid. Because I thought I didn't deserve you. Because I thought—" "You thought wrong." His hands cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away the tears she had not realized were falling. "Marin, I do not care about the scandal. I do not care what Lady Whitmore says or what society thinks. I care about you, only you. You barely know me. I know enough. I know that you make me want to be present instead of hiding. I know that you challenge me and frustrate me and make me laugh for the first time in months. I know that when you left, I felt like someone had carved out my heart and taken it with them." He leaned his forehead against hers. "I know that I love you, and I know that I will spend the rest of my life proving it if you will let me." The air left her body. "You love me. Hopelessly. Desperately. Completely." His voice was raw. "I've been dead for 9 months, Marin, going through the motions, performing my duties, but not feeling anything. And then you appeared, dripping wet and furious and absolutely magnificent. And you woke me up. You brought me back to life. I am nobody. A governess's daughter with nothing to offer. You are everything." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and the tip of her nose. "You are brave and brilliant and beautiful. You are the woman who called a duke rude to his face within 5 minutes of meeting him. You are the woman who negotiated terms when any other person would have simply accepted what was offered. You are extraordinary. And I would be honored, humbled, grateful beyond measure if you would agree to be my wife." The world stopped. "Your wife? Marry me, Marin." He pulled back, his eyes shining with hope and fear and desperate love. "Marry me and let us face whatever comes together. I do not care about the whispers. I do not care about the scandal. I only care about waking up every morning knowing you are mine and I am yours. Say yes. Please say yes." Marin looked at this man, this cold duke who had melted before her eyes, this grieving son who had learned to feel again, this impossible, infuriating, wonderful man who was offering her everything she had ever wanted. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. Yes. 1,000 times. Yes." He kissed her then, properly, thoroughly, in full view of anyone who cared to look. And Marin kissed him back with everything she had, with all the fear and hope and love that had been building since she first knocked on the wrong door in a storm. When they finally broke apart, breathless and laughing, she became aware of an audience. The dowager stood in the doorway, her expression complicated. Behind her, Nell was openly weeping. And further back, just visible through the windows, Lady Lavinia watched with a face like thunder. Marin found she did not care. She had made her choice, and for the first time in her life, she had chosen love. Later, she would find the journal waiting on her writing desk, exactly where she had left it. Its pages would no longer stay blank. The dowager summoned them to her private sitting room an hour later. Marin entered with her hand clasped in Kaylin's, her chin lifted, ready for battle. But the older woman's expression was not hostile. It was thoughtful. "So," she said, settling into her chair, "you have decided to marry." "We have, despite the scandal, despite the whispers, despite everything I warned you about." Kaylin's grip tightened. "Because of everything you warned us about. You told me to find someone who would make me live again. I have found her. I am not letting her go." The dowager's gaze shifted to Marin. "And you, Miss Vane? What do you say?" Marin stepped forward, releasing Kaylin's hand. "I say that I love your grandson, Not his title, or his fortune, or his position. Him. The man who reads philosophy in his library, and rides his horse at dawn, and carries the weight of his father's death like a stone around his heart. I love his stubbornness and his pride, and his unexpected kindness. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure he knows he is loved. If that is not enough for you, then I am sorry. But I will not apologize for who I am or where I came from. I am Maren Vane, and I am going to be his wife. The silence stretched between them. Then the dowager did something Maren had never expected. She smiled. "Your mother was right about you," she said quietly. "My mother?" I wrote to her, the day after the ball. I wanted to know who you really were, beneath the story and the circumstances. Do you know what she told me? Maren shook her head, too stunned to speak. She told me you were the strongest person she knew, that you had held your family together when everything fell apart, that you had sacrificed your own dreams to ensure your brother and parents survived, and that if I was wise, I would recognize a diamond before someone else claimed it. The dowager rose, crossing to where they stood. "I have been foolish," she continued. "I thought I knew what was best for my grandson. I thought suitability and connections mattered more than love. I was wrong." She reached out, taking Maren's hands in her own. "Welcome to the family, my dear. You have more than earned your place in it." Maren's eyes filled with tears. "Your Grace. Call me grandmother. If you are to be a duchess, you might as well start practicing." Kaelin laughed, the sound bright and free and full of joy. "Does this mean you will support the match publicly?" "I will do more than that." The dowager's expression turned fierce. "I will personally destroy anyone who speaks ill of your bride. Lady Whitmore will find herself mysteriously absent from every guest list in England. And Lady Lavinia?" She smiled coldly. "Lady Lavinia will learn that there are consequences for attempting to harm this family." Maren did not know whether to laugh or cry. She did both, and Kaelin pulled her close, and the dowager watched them with something like satisfaction. "Now," the older woman said briskly, "we have a wedding to plan, and a scandal to manage. There is no time for sentiment." But her eyes were warm as she said it, and Maren knew, finally, that she had found her place. The wedding of the Duke of Ravenmore to Miss Maren Vane was the most talked-about event of the season. Some called it a scandal, others called it a romance. The newspapers printed breathless accounts of the mysterious woman who had arrived at the Duke's door in a storm and captured his heart. The gossips whispered about her humble origins, her lack of fortune, and her audacity in reaching so far above her station. But when they saw her walk down the aisle of the village church, radiant in ivory silk, they fell silent. And when they saw the Duke's face as he watched her approach, tears streaming unashamedly down his cheeks, even the hardest heart softened. The ceremony was small but perfect. The dowager presided like a queen. Nell wept in the front pew. Maren's mother sat beside her, clutching her husband's hand, both of them beaming with pride. And when the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Kaelin kissed his bride with such tenderness that several ladies in the congregation had to reach for their handkerchiefs. The wedding breakfast was held at Ravenmore Hall, transformed for the occasion into a garden of flowers and candlelight. The guests danced and laughed and toasted the newlyweds until the stars came out. At some point during the evening, Lady Lavinia appeared at the edge of the ballroom. She watched Maren dancing with her husband, watched the way they looked at each other, watched the obvious, undeniable love between them. Then she turned and left without a word. No one noticed her go. The months that followed were the happiest of Maren's life. She learned to be a duchess, with all its responsibilities and privileges. She managed the household, supported Kaelin's work in Parliament, and hosted gatherings that became famous for their warmth and wit. The ton gradually accepted her, won over by her intelligence and charm and the obvious devotion of her husband. The dowager became her greatest ally, teaching her the intricacies of aristocratic life, defending her against any hint of criticism, eventually admitting that perhaps love matches were not such foolish things after all. Marin's family flourished as well. Her father, freed from financial worry, slowly emerged from his shell. Her mother visited Ravenmore often, becoming fast friends with the dowager over shared cups of tea and shared pride in their extraordinary daughter. Even her brother settled down, taking a position in Kaelin's household that suited his restless nature. But the greatest joy came on a spring morning, 1 year after the wedding. Marin stood at the window of the library, watching dawn break over the Ravenmore grounds. Her hand rested on the gentle swell of her belly, and she smiled. Kaelin appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You are awake early. I could not sleep." "The baby?" "The baby is fine." Marin turned in his arms, looking up at her husband's face. "I was thinking about that night. The storm. The wrong door. The best mistake either of us ever made. I was so afraid. So convinced I did not belong here. And now? Now I cannot imagine being anywhere else." He kissed her softly, reverently, the way he had kissed her 1,000 times since that first moment in the library. "I have something for you. Another gift. A tradition." He produced a small leather journal, identical to the one he had given her all those months ago. "I noticed you filled the first one. I thought you might need another." Marin took it, her eyes filling with tears. The pages of the first journal were indeed full. Poems and thoughts and memories. The story of her transformation from frightened governess to beloved duchess. Every fear, every joy, every moment of this impossible journey. "I will never stop writing," she whispered. "Good. Because I intend to give you stories worth recording for the rest of our lives." They stood together in the library as the sun rose over Ravenmore, two people who had found each other against all odds. A duke who had forgotten how to feel. A woman who had knocked on the wrong door in a storm. And a love that had melted even the coldest heart. Years later, their children would ask to hear the story. "Tell us again," they would beg. "Tell us how Mama found Papa." And Kaelin would gather them close, with Marin tucked against his side, and he would begin the same way every time. "It was a dark and stormy night," he would say, his eyes twinkling. "And a very stubborn woman knocked on the wrong door." She was not stubborn, Marin would protest. She was resourceful. She was both, he would concede. And she was magnificent. The children would giggle. The dowager, ancient now but still formidable, would smile from her chair by the fire. And Marin would rest her head against her husband's shoulder, exactly as she had that first night in the storm, and know that this was exactly where she belonged. Some stories begin with once upon a time. Theirs began with a storm, and it ended, as all the best stories do, with love. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories exist, because you believe in love that chooses courage over convenience, in characters who fight for happiness despite the odds, in endings that feel earned and true. Your presence makes this space warm and welcoming, and I am grateful for every moment you spend with these characters. Do you have a favorite line or scene? Your engagement helps me understand what moves you, what keeps you listening, and what kinds of stories to create next. Consider subscribing if you would like more historical romances with emotional depth and genuine character growth. Thank you for being here. You make this community what it is.